just need to tell us his name.
No goddamn names. Do you understand? You have to protect it.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Criminal Record Episode 4 Recap and Spoilers. Did June Lenker find Carla? Criminal Record's fourth episode presented a large number of characters, demonstrating the series' complexity. There are many people engaged, and while Lenker and Hegarty are the only ones we see at the head of the crisis, there are many other parties who are emerging from the shadows. Errol Mathis' case is becoming increasingly complex as Lenker draws closer to locating the anonymous caller that initiated this saga. Hegarty's blind spot is highlighted as his friendship with Patrick Burroughs becomes more evident. The show has a habit of bringing up incredibly intricate information to create suspense, but it may be becoming too handy a tactic for magically getting out of a cul-de-sac. Hegarty believed he had Lenker under control, but she was not going to stop until she discovered what Hegarty's involvement in the Errol Mathis case was. There was definitely some malpractice going on, and Lenker was getting close to figuring out who else was involved. Tony, Hegarty's old friend, was now in the hospital, but he was keeping an eye on her, while Kim couldn't understand why Hegarty gave Lenker the spotlight by forcing her to sit at the press conference for Isaac's case. Hegarty was light years ahead of those two, with intentions to bury Lenker in the ruins of the case. By giving Lenker the spotlight, he had put her in danger, as the gangs now recognized her face. Jason Reeve, the putative shooter in Isaac's case, was apprehended in the previous episode, and Hegarty took every opportunity to call Lenker's judgment into question in this case. Jason had confessed to the crime, and when Hegarty questioned Lenker for her thoughts on the confession, she could only respond that it was compelling. Hegarty later presented convincing counter-arguments. Hegarty was able to present himself as if he lacked any racist tendencies. Jason was a person of color, and Hegarty, rather than Lenker, was inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt. An eyewitness came forward and said that the shooter was a white male. Later, Hegarty caught a Turkish guy named Ahmet Seker, who proved out to be the actual shooter. Hegarty could have thought Lenker was put in her place, but the Turkish aspect of Isaac's case reminded her of Mustafa, Errol's alibi, who was said to have returned to Turkey. How did Lenker discover Errol's alibi? This is the section of the program that relied on a ridiculous spelling error, which could have been planned for all we know. Lenker was on the team that was looking for a Turkish man before Hegarty found him, and she contacted Hassad, who was pleased that Lenker spelled his name with a single. Turkish names have uncommon spellings, which caused Lenker to suspect that Sonia and the others had not sought out the Mustafa, who was Errol's alibi. She explored the internet and discovered Mustafa, who claimed to be the individual Errol was referring to. Errol claimed to be at Mustafa's barbershop at the time of the murder, but because Mustafa identified the wrong man from among the several shown to him, Errol was denied the benefit of the alibi. Lenker couldn't believe Mustafa hadn't gone back and changed his statement. He stated that the males in the images appeared the same to him, but that he was not a racist. He asserted it as a fact, but Errol's life was on the line. Lenker wanted him to return to the detectives, but she realized that an alibi showing up 12 years later to correct his error wouldn't help Errol. Mustafa was too terrified to return to the detectives in charge of the case due to their far-right ties. Lenker's hunt was over, but there was still hope. Carla, the Hayes Lane caller, had been found. Why did Carla call Lenker? Hegarty was unaware that his daughter Lisa was dating Patrick. Hegarty was well aware that his affiliation with Patrick could land him in hot water, but he remained there, assisting Patrick whenever he got into trouble. Aside from Patrick, there was Carla, another critical link that Hegarty needed to identify and cut if he wanted Lenker to stop her persistent pursuit. Sonia and Lenker had posted posters encouraging people to come forward if they recognized the Hayes Lane caller. A woman came forward to identify herself as Carla, who had worked as a cleaner in a Portuguese refugee house but quit after meeting a lover. Lenker couldn't identify Carla's location, and she soon realized that Hegarty might be aware that she was coming near, as her life became a living hell. First, the gang set fire to her automobile. Hegarty consoled Lenker and offered her security, but she was having none of it. The fact that her car was being tracked made her feel threatened. Nobody in her department agreed that Hegarty put trackers on everyone's cars and bribed gang members to silence an officer. It was an exaggerated claim, and Roy Chambers, Lenker's superior, was having none of that. To make matters worse, Chloe accused her of bullying when she gave her the secret pathology report for Maria de Souza's case at Lenker's request. The implication was that Lenker was light-skinned and thus featured on the news, while Chloe, a dark-skinned girl, was limited to providing secret information to her. Lenker, on the verge of a mental breakdown, received a call from one of the refugee shelters informing her about a male officer who inquired about Carla. Lenker was concerned that Hegarty was after Carla, but Tony was obtaining the information through Letitia. Letitia worked for Doris, and after hearing about Carla, Doris realized Lenker had made a significant advance in that case. Letitia had been arrested 8 years ago and served as Tony's inside man, sharing information about Doris' activities and plans. She did this in exchange for an apartment, but Lenker wanted her to stop working for Doris as soon as possible. Lenker was surprised by how far Hegarty and his crew went to imprison Errol. She confronted Hegarty, alerting him to Tony's secret operation against Doris. Hegarty was shaken, but he advised Lenker that she was playing with fire and might rescue herself by backing off. In terms of explaining Tony's behavior, Hegarty attempted to persuade Lenker that Tony had multiple sclerosis and that he had nothing better to do than follow up on an old hospital case. Lenker was up against a system that overwhelmingly favored Hegarty. Carla called Lenker and instructed her not to investigate Errol's case any further because she was dealing with someone who was protected. He had previously gotten away with something similar, and he could do it again. Carla hung up before Lenker could ask her where she was. The episode left many people wondering who Carla's lover was and whether he was the one Hegarty and others were trying to protect. Throughout the episode, a mysterious stranger followed Hegarty, taking images of him as if he were a private investigator. He could be working for someone or on his own, but he may have some answers that will be presented in the upcoming episode.